Chapter 1. Sugar and smoke. The bakery smelled like butter and burnt sugar, and I was late. Not fashionably late. Catastrophically late. The kind of late that makes you question whether showing up at all is worse than just disappearing into the Mediterranean and never coming back. I pushed through the glass door of Dolce Vita, my hair still damp from the shower I'd barely had time to take, my phone vibrating in my purse with what I assumed were increasingly frantic texts from my business partner. The little bell above the door chimed, sharp and cheerful, mocking my disaster of a morning. "I'm here for the Castellano order," I said to the woman behind the counter, trying to catch my breath. "The tiered cake with the gold leaf? It was supposed to be ready an hour ago, but One moment, please." She disappeared into the back, and I pressed my palms against the cool marble counter, willing my heart to slow down. This wedding cake was the centerpiece of the most important event I'd ever coordinated. A senator's daughter, 300 guests, flowers imported from Amsterdam, and me, Julia Santoro, event planner extraordinaire, currently melting down in a bakery at 9 in the morning because I'd overslept for the first time in 5 years. The door chimed again behind me. I didn't turn. I was too busy rehearsing my apology to the bride, mentally cataloging every backup bakery within a 10-mile radius, wondering if I could convince her that buttercream was more elegant than fondant anyway. "Julia." The voice stopped my thoughts cold. Low, quiet, familiar in the way that nightmares are familiar. I turned slowly, and there he was. Dante Moretti, 6 feet of tailored black suit and controlled violence, standing in a bakery like he belonged there, like he belonged anywhere, like the entire world had simply rearranged itself around him the moment he walked in. His dark hair was shorter than I remembered, swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble if marble could look that cruel. And his eyes, God, his eyes were the same shade of smoke and storm they'd always been. The same eyes I'd woken up to for 2 years. The same eyes I'd walked away from 3 years ago. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Picking up a cake." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like we were strangers making small talk, like he hadn't shattered me into pieces so small I'd spent a year learning how to breathe again. I forced a smile, professional, distant. "Well, don't let me keep you." But he didn't move. He just stood there, studying me with that unreadable expression I'd never been able to decode. And I hated that my body still remembered him, hated that my pulse had kicked up, that my skin had gone warm, that some stupid, treacherous part of me wanted to step closer instead of running for the door. The clerk returned, carrying a large white box. "Ms. Santoro, your cake is—" "Oh." She stopped, glancing between us. "Mr. Moretti, your order isn't quite ready yet. Another 10 minutes? I'll wait." Of course he would. The clerk set my box on the counter, and I reached for my wallet with hands that I hoped weren't shaking. I could feel Dante's presence like heat against my back, could smell the faint trace of his cologne cedar and something darker, something that reminded me of late nights and whispered promises I'd been stupid enough to believe. "How have you been?" he asked. "Busy?" I signed the receipt, keeping my eyes down. "You?" "The same." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I picked up the box, careful to avoid his gaze, and turned toward the door. "Julia." I stopped. I shouldn't have, but I did. "It's good to see you." I looked back at him then, really looked, and found something in his expression that made my chest tighten. Something almost like regret. But Dante Moretti didn't do regret. He did ruthless. He did calculated. He did whatever the hell he wanted and let the rest of the world deal with the consequences. "Goodbye, Dante." I was halfway to the door when I heard it. A small voice, bright and clear. "Papa, can I have the one with strawberries?" I froze. A little girl stood in the doorway of the shop, no more than 3 years old, with dark curls and eyes the color of honey. She wore a yellow dress with white flowers, and she was holding Dante's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she was his. My vision narrowed. The box in my hands suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. "Julia." Dante started, but I was already moving, pushing past him, past the little girl, out into the brutal Roman sunlight that felt too bright, too hot, too everything. A daughter. He had a daughter. I made it 3 steps before I heard him behind me. Wait, don't. I spun around, and I didn't care that my voice cracked, didn't care that I could feel the fracture lines spreading through my chest. Don't say another word. But his expression had changed. The careful control was gone, replaced by something raw and urgent. She's not mine, he said quietly. She's yours. The wedding cake box slipped from my hands and shattered on the cobblestones. Chapter 2. The Impossible Truth. The world didn't stop spinning. I wished it would. Instead, it kept turning, indifferent and cruel, while I stood on a sun-bleached Roman street with shattered cake at my feet, and Dante Moretti telling me the most insane lie I'd ever heard. What did you just say? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Dante's jaw tightened. Behind him, his little girl, not mine. Couldn't be, mine had. Retreated into the bakery doorway, watching us with those enormous honey-colored eyes. The same shade as my grandmother's. The same shade as mine. No, we need to talk, Dante said. Not here. I don't need to do anything. I bent down, grabbing pieces of ruined cake with trembling hands, needing something to do with them before I did something stupid like scream or cry or demand answers to questions I couldn't even form yet. I need to deliver this cake. I need to. The cake's destroyed, Julia. I can see that. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. I can see a lot of things, actually. Like you, standing here with a child you claim is mine, which is biologically impossible considering I've never been pregnant, never given birth, and definitely never abandoned a baby somewhere for you to conveniently find 3 years later. He moved closer, and I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped over the curb. Don't, I warned. Dante stopped. For a moment, something flickered across his face, hurt, maybe, or frustration, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He slipped one hand into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, tapped the screen twice, then held it out to me. Look at this. I didn't take the phone. I need to go. Julia. His voice dropped lower, taking on that edge of command that used to make me want to both obey and rebel in equal measure. Look. At this. Against every instinct screaming at me to run, I looked. The photo on his screen showed a hospital document. Clinical, cold, full of medical terminology I didn't understand, but I understood the date 3 years and 8 months ago. I understood the names at the top, Julia Santoro and Dante Moretti. And I understood the words at the bottom, typed in stark black letters, viable embryo, successfully preserved. The street tilted beneath my feet. That's not possible. But even as I said it, memories were surfacing. The fertility clinic we'd visited during our marriage, the options the doctor had discussed while Dante held my hand. And I'd felt too young, too uncertain, too not ready for any of it. The paperwork I'd signed because Dante had wanted it, because he'd looked at me with those storm cloud eyes and said someday, and I'd been stupid enough to believe in someday. You destroyed those, I whispered. After the divorce. You said you would. I lied. 2 words, delivered with such casual brutality that I actually laughed, high and sharp. Of course you did. I looked past him at the little girl who was now sitting on the bakery's front step, swinging her legs and humming something tuneless. So what, you just decided to have a baby without telling me? Without my consent? You used my genetic material like it was yours to play with? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Dante? I could feel my control slipping, could feel 3 years of carefully constructed distance crumbling. Explain to me how you accidentally created a child from embryos I thought were destroyed. He was quiet for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Someone else used them, not me. The words hung in the air between us, impossible and terrifying. What? The clinic was compromised. A doctor on my family's payroll, one I trusted, took the embryo without authorization. By the time I found out, she was already born. He glanced back at the little girl and something in his expression softened in a way I'd never seen before. Her name is Elena. And before you ask, no, I don't know who carried her. The doctor's dead. The surrogate disappeared. and I'd spent 3 years trying to find answers. My phone was ringing in my purse. The wedding, the senator's daughter. My entire career potentially circling the drain while I stood here listening to a story that sounded like a terrible thriller novel. "This is insane," I said. You could have called. You could have told me any time in the past 3 years that I apparently have a biological daughter walking around Rome. Would you have believed me?" He had a point. If Dante had called me a month ago, a year ago, told me this story, I would have assumed it was some kind of manipulation. Another way to pull me back into his orbit. Another lie wrapped in just enough truth to be dangerous. But looking at Elena, at the way she tilted her head and squinted against the sun, at the stubborn set of her small jaw, I saw myself. I saw my mother. I saw something undeniable and impossible and real. "I need proof," I heard myself say. "DNA tests, medical records, everything. I have it, all of it." Dante stepped closer, and this time I didn't retreat. "Come with me. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking." "I can't. I have a wedding that you just destroyed the cake for." His eyes held mine. 1 hour, Julia, to meet your daughter, to get answers, and then, if you want, you never have to see either of us again. Elena chose that moment to stand up and walk toward us, her small hand reaching for Dante's with complete trust. She looked up at me with those honey-colored eyes, and my heart cracked clean in half. "Is she my new mama?" Elena asked, her voice small and hopeful. Dante's hand tightened around hers. His eyes never left mine. "That," he said quietly, "depends on what she decides." Chapter 3. The archive of lies. I sat in the back of Dante's Cara black Mercedes that still smelled like leather and his cologne and watched Rome blur past the tinted windows. Elena was buckled into a car seat beside me, humming the same tuneless melody from before, completely unaware that my entire world had just fractured into pieces. I didn't know how to reassemble. I'd texted my business partner a lie about food poisoning, sent the bride an apology and a promise to fix everything. Then I'd climbed into this car like a woman walking toward her own execution. "Where are we going?" I asked. Dante's eyes found mine in the rearview mirror. "Somewhere private." Of course, privacy was always Dante's first concern. Not honesty. Not explanation, just control of the narrative, control of the space, control of everything and everyone around him. The car turned down a narrow street in Trastevere, then into an underground garage beneath a building I didn't recognize. Modern. Expensive. The kind of place that didn't appear on any tourist map. This way. Dante opened my door, then reached for Elena, who went to him easily, wrapping her small arms around his neck. The gesture was so natural, so practiced, that it made something twist painfully in my chest. 3 years. She'd had 3 years of life I knew nothing about. We took a private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Tiber. The space was minimalist white walls, dark furniture, no personal touches except for the scattered toys in one corner. A stuffed rabbit. Building blocks, a picture book lying open on the coffee table, evidence of a child's life, evidence of everything I'd missed. "Can I show her my room?" Elena asked, tugging on Dante's sleeve. "Not yet, Tesoro." He set her down gently. "Why don't you watch cartoons for a little while?" He guided her to the couch, turned on the television, and handed her the stuffed rabbit. Elena accepted this without protest, already absorbed in whatever colorful animation filled the screen. Then Dante gestured toward a hallway, my office. I followed him into a room that was pure Dante dark wood desk, leather chairs, shelves lined with books in Italian and English. But it was the folder waiting on the desk that drew my attention. Thick, official looking, marked with a red tab. He picked it up and held it out to me. "Everything's here. Medical records from the clinic. DNA results confirming she's biologically yours and mine. The investigation into Dr. Russo, the physician who took the embryo. Security footage from the clinic. Timeline of when I discovered what happened." I opened the folder with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The first document was a birth certificate. Elena Maria Moretti. Mother, unknown. Father, Dante Moretti. The date made my throat tight 3 years and 4 months ago. I would have been in Milan then, launching my business, trying to build a life that had nothing to do with this man. The second document was a DNA analysis, the technical language blurred, but the conclusion was clear. 99.9% probability of maternity. My genetic markers. My contribution to a child I'd never known existed. How? I looked up at him, and my voice cracked. How does someone just steal an embryo? Dante moved to the window, his back to me, shoulders tense beneath his suit jacket. Dr. Russo had gambling debts, someone I still don't know who paid him to acquire genetic material from high-profile families. He took ours, implanted it in a surrogate, delivered Elena to a couple who thought they were adopting legally. And then the couple died in a car accident when Elena was 4 months old. No other family. She went into the system. His reflection in the window looked carved from stone. I only found out because one of my lawyers was reviewing the clinic's records for an unrelated case. He saw our names, started asking questions. I flipped through more pages. Photos of Dr. Russo middle-aged, ordinary, the kind of face you'd forget immediately. Police reports documenting his death 2 years ago. Apparent suicide, the report said. But the way Dante's jaw tightened told me there was more to that story. You killed him, I said. Not a question. He destroyed himself. Dante turned to face me, but I won't pretend I mourned him. There were more documents, legal filings establishing Dante's paternity, a dozen dead-end leads on the surrogate's identity, background checks on the couple who'd briefly been Elena's parents, young, infertile, desperate enough to trust the wrong people, and at the bottom of the folder, a single photograph. Elena, as an infant, maybe 6 months old, being held by a woman whose face was deliberately angled away from the camera. The surrogate, I realized. The only image Dante had managed to find. Why didn't you tell me? The question came out quieter than I intended. When you found out, why wait 3 years? He was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Because I knew what I'd done to you. The lies. The life you never wanted. I thought. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration I remembered too well. I thought you deserved peace, that dragging you back into my world, telling you about Elena, would only hurt you more. So you decided for me. Anger flared hot in my chest, just like you always did. Yes, the honesty of it stunned me. No excuses, no justifications. Then why tell me now? I demanded. Why bring me here? Why? A sound cut through the air, sharp, urgent, breaking glass. Dante moved instantly, positioning himself between me and the door. When he spoke, his voice had gone cold and deadly. Get down. Now. That's when I heard Elena scream. Chapter 4. Blood and belonging. Dante was already moving before Elena's second scream cut through the air. I bolted after him, my heels loud against the hardwood, my heart a violent drum in my chest. The living room. We'd left her in the living room, safe, watching cartoons, just 30 feet away. The window was shattered. Not broken shattered. Glass scattered across the white rug like diamonds, catching the afternoon light. The television still played its cheerful animation, absurdly bright against the chaos. And Elena, she was pressed against the far wall. The stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, her eyes wide with terror. But she was alive. Whole. Unharmed. Dante reached her first, dropping to his knees and pulling her against him with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a man who'd just moved like violence incarnate. His hands ran over her hair, her arms, checking for injuries with practiced efficiency. Va bene, tesoro. Va bene. His voice was steady, soothing, even as his eyes scanned the room with lethal focus. Did you see anyone? Did anyone touch you? Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind trying to process what I was seeing. The shattered window, the brick lying in the center of the room, wrapped in paper. the way Dante had transformed from businessman to something far more dangerous in the space of a heartbeat. He pulled out his phone, pressed a single button. Lorenzo, penthouse, now. Then he was standing, Elena in his arms, already moving toward me. We're leaving. What? Now, Julia? The command in his voice left no room for argument. He pushed past me, into the hallway, and I followed on instinct, my body moving before my brain could catch up. The elevator. The garage. Another car, this one, armored, I realized, with a sick jolt already waiting with the engine running. A man I didn't recognize held the door open. Young. Efficient. Armed. Dante slid Elena into the backseat, buckled her in with movements made clumsy by urgency, then turned to me. Get in. I don't understand what's happening. Someone just threw a brick through my window while my daughter was in the room. His eyes were smoke and fury. Get in the car. I got in. The door slammed. Dante took the front passenger seat, and the driver pulled out before I'd even fastened my seatbelt. The car moved through Rome like water, smooth and fast, taking turns I didn't recognize, heading away from the center of the city. Elena had stopped crying, but she was trembling. Without thinking, I reached over and took her small hand. She gripped my fingers with surprising strength. Is someone trying to hurt us? Her voice was so small. No one's going to hurt you, Dante said, twisting to look back at her. I promise. But I saw the lie in the tension of his shoulders, in the way his hand rested near the glove compartment where I was certain there was a gun. Who was it? I asked quietly. I don't know yet. He pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly. Could be Castellano, could be the Russians, could be someone trying to send a message about the Calabrian deal. The names meant nothing to me, but the context meant everything. This is your life, I said. Not a question, a realization. This is what you do. Why you have armored cars and armed drivers and apartments that get attacked in broad daylight. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The car turned down a private road, then through iron gates that opened automatically. A villa appeared, old stone, sprawling gardens, the kind of generational wealth that couldn't be bought, only inherited or stolen. Where are we? Somewhere safe? Dante was already opening Elena's door, lifting her out. She wrapped her legs around his waist, her face buried in his neck. The estate's been in my family for 200 years. 8-foot walls, armed security. No one gets in without my permission. He carried Elena up the stone steps through massive wooden doors into a foyer that looked like it belonged in a museum. Marble floors, Renaissance paintings, a chandelier that probably cost more than my apartment. A woman appeared, older, gray-haired, wearing an apron. She took one look at Elena and opened her arms. Dio mio, piccola. Come here, Bella. Come here, Bella. Let's get you some hot chocolate. Elena went to her without hesitation, and I watched the stranger, this woman who clearly knew my daughter better than I did, carry her away down a hallway, murmuring comfort in rapid Italian. Then it was just Dante and me, standing in this cavernous space, and I could feel 3 years of distance collapsing into nothing. You need to leave Rome, he said. Tonight, I'll arrange everything, new identity, security, money. You can go anywhere, start over, stay safe. I stared at him. You think I'm just going to run? I think you're smart enough to recognize danger when it's thrown through a window. And Elena? Something flickered across his face. She stays with me. She's used to this life. She has protection. She's mine. The words came out fierce, surprising us both. You said it yourself. She's biologically mine, and now someone's trying to hurt her, and you expect me to just disappear? To let you handle it alone? This isn't your world, Julia. No, I agreed. It's not. But apparently, she's my daughter, so maybe it's time I learned. Dante moved closer, and I could see something dangerous brewing behind his eyes. Something that looked almost like hope. You don't know what you're saying. Then explain it to me. I held my ground. Tell me who's trying to hurt Elena. Tell me why. And tell me what the hell I've just walked into. He studied me for a long moment, then pulled the brick's paper wrapping from his pocket. The message was written in red ink, stark and threatening. The daughter pays for the father's sins. Chapter 5. The Price of Protection. The paper trembled in my hand, or maybe that was just me. What sins? I asked. Dante took the note back, folded it once, twice, until it was small enough to destroy. How much do you know about what I do? I know you told me you were an import-export. The words tasted bitter. I know I was stupid enough to believe you for 2 years. And I know that when I finally saw the truth, the money, the men, the violence, I ran. You weren't stupid. He moved toward a side table, poured amber liquid into 2 glasses. Whiskey, probably, the expensive kind. You were young. And I was careful. You were a liar. Yes, he held out a glass to me. But that doesn't change what's happening now. I took it, but didn't drink. So explain. Who wants to hurt Elena? And why now after 3 years? He downed his whiskey in one swallow, then set the glass down with controlled precision. 6 months ago I took control of the port operations in Naples. It was bloody, necessary, and it made me enemies. Enemies who target children, enemies who target anything I care about. His jaw tightened. The Marchetti family lost the port contract, lost face, lost revenue. They've been looking for leverage ever since. I thought of Elena, small and trembling, clutching that rabbit. She's 3 years old, which makes her perfect. Dante's voice had gone flat, professional, like he was describing a business transaction instead of a death threat. They can't touch me directly. I'm too protected. But a child? One I've kept mostly hidden from my world? One who isn't officially mine in most records? He paused. She's vulnerable, and they know it. The whiskey burned down my throat. How do they even know about her? Someone talked. Someone always talks. He pulled out his phone, typed something. I have people investigating, but these things take time, and time is something we don't have. So what's your plan? Keep her locked in this villa forever? If necessary. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. That's not a life. It's better than death. We stood there, the weight of that truth settling between us. Outside the windows, I could see the gardens, manicured, beautiful, surrounded by walls that suddenly looked less like luxury and more like a prison. There has to be another way, I said. There isn't. Dante moved closer, and I could see the exhaustion beneath his controlled exterior. This is my world, Julia. This is what I tried to protect you from. And now you're in it because of a decision I made 3 years ago to keep Elena, to raise her, to make her part of my life. I won't apologize for that, but I won't let her pay for it either. By making her a prisoner? By keeping her alive? The sound of footsteps made us both turn. The gray-haired woman appeared in the doorway, Elena holding her hand. Our daughter's face was still blotchy from crying, but she'd stopped shaking. She wants to show you her playroom, the woman said in accented English, looking at me. If that's all right? Elena's honey-colored eyes found mine, hopeful and uncertain. I knelt down, bringing myself to her level. Up close, I could see more of myself in her. The shape of her nose, the curve of her mouth, the stubborn chin. But there was Dante there too, in the intensity of her gaze, in the way she held herself with unconscious dignity, despite her fear. I'd love to see your playroom, I said softly. Her small hand slipped into mine, warm and trusting, and something fundamental shifted inside my chest. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This wasn't a folder full of documents or a DNA test or a problem to be solved. This was a child. My child. Flesh and blood and fragile life. Come on, Elena said, tugging me toward the stairs. I have 17 stuffed animals. Papa says that's too many, but I think it's just right. I followed her up the curved staircase, past more paintings and antiques, down a hallway lined with family portraits. Men in military uniforms, women in elaborate gowns. The Moretti legacy stretching back centuries. And now, Elena was part of it. Now, I was part of it. The playroom was exactly what I'd expect from a man with unlimited resources trying to give a child everything enormous. filled with toys, books, art supplies. A princess castle in one corner, a reading nook with cushions by the window, everything a little girl could want. Except freedom, except normalcy, except a life beyond these walls. Elena launched into an animated explanation of each stuffed animal's name and personality. I sat on the floor and listened, watching her small hands gesture, her face light up with the kind of pure joy that only children can manage, even after trauma. She was resilient, strong, like me, I realized, like my mother had been, Julia. I looked up to find Dante in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Lorenzo just called. They found the driver who delivered the brick. He paused, his eyes moving to Elena, then back to me. It's worse than I thought. The threat isn't just from the Marquettes. Someone inside my organization is working against me. Someone close. The room suddenly felt too small, too exposed, despite the guards and walls and centuries of protection. What does that mean? I asked, though I already knew. Dante's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. It means we can't trust anyone, and it means you and Elena aren't safe here. Elena looked up from her toys, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Papa, are the bad men coming back? He crossed the room, crouched beside her, and pulled her into his arms. Over her head, his eyes met mine. No, tesoro, he lied gently, but we're going to take a little trip just for a while. Where? Elena asked. Dante's gaze never left mine. Somewhere no one will think to look. Chapter 6. Sanctuary and Secrets. The cottage was older than Rome itself, or at least it felt that way. Stone walls thick enough to withstand sieges, wooden beams dark with age, windows so small they might have been arrow slits in another life. It sat nestled in the Umbrian hills, surrounded by olive groves and silence so complete it felt like stepping out of time. My grandmother's house, Dante said, carrying a sleeping Elena inside. No one's used it in years. It's not in any official records, not connected to the family holdings. I followed him through the narrow doorway, my overnight bag hastily packed at the villa bumping against my hip. The interior was simple, rustic, a far cry from the marble and chandeliers we've left behind. How long do we stay here? I asked. Until I know who betrayed me. He laid Elena on a bed in the corner, covering her with a thick quilt, and until I've dealt with them. The way he said dealt with made my stomach tighten. We'd driven for 3 hours in silence, taking back roads, switching vehicles twice. Dante's phone had buzzed constantly, texts, calls, demands for his attention. He'd ignored all of it, his focus absolute, his hand steady on the wheel even as I'd watched the tendons in his jaw work with tension. Now, in this ancient cottage with night falling outside, he finally looked at me. There's food in the cellar, a generator for power. Lorenzo will bring supplies tomorrow. He's the only one who knows we're here. He moved toward the door. Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone but Lorenzo. He'll use the code word, Benito. Wait. I grabbed his arm. You're leaving? I have to go back to Rome. Find the traitor. End this. And just leave us here? Alone? With no protection? You're safer here than anywhere in the city. He looked down at where my hand still gripped his sleeve, and something flickered in his expression. No one knows about this place, Julia. My grandmother made sure of that. She understood the value of secrets. What if you're wrong? What if someone followed us? They didn't. How can you be sure? Because I'm very good at what I do. He said it without arrogance, just cold fact. And because if anyone had followed us, they'd already be dead. I dropped his arm. I forgot what you are. No. His voice went quiet. You just forgot what I'm capable of when someone threatens what's mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have angered me, should have reminded me of all the reasons I'd left, all the ways he'd tried to control every aspect of my life during our marriage. But today, with Elena sleeping behind us and danger circling somewhere in the dark, it just felt like truth. She's not a possession, I said anyway. Neither are you. He moved closer and I could smell cedar and smoke. could feel the heat of him in the small space. But that doesn't mean I'll let anyone hurt you. You don't get to protect me anymore. We're divorced. I know. Something raw crossed his face. Doesn't change the fact that I will. We stood there too close, the air between us charged with 3 years of unspoken things. I should have stepped back, should have put distance between us. But my body remembered his in ways my mind couldn't override, remembered how his hands felt, how his voice sounded in darkness, how he'd once looked at me like I was the only real thing in his entire violent world. Why did you really keep the embryo? The question came out before I could stop it. The truth this time. Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, because I couldn't let you go. Not completely. Even after you left. Even after I signed the papers, I needed some part of you to still exist in my world. The honesty of it stole my breath. That's insane, I whispered. Yes. He reached up, almost touching my face, then dropped his hand. But I never claimed to be sane where you're concerned. A sound from the bed made us both turn. Elena shifted in her sleep, murmuring something incoherent, her small hand reaching for the stuffed rabbit that Lorenzo had somehow remembered to pack. She asks about you, Dante said quietly. Not by name, she doesn't know who you are yet. But she asks why she doesn't have a mama like other children, why it's just Papa and Rosa and the guards. My throat tightened. What do you tell her? That her mama is very brave, very beautiful, and that she loves Elena very much, even if they haven't met yet. He paused. I wasn't lying about any of it. I looked at him, really looked, and saw past the expensive suit and controlled violence to something more complicated underneath. Loss, longing, the kind of love that looked like obsession from certain angles. I can't be part of your world, Dante, I said. I tried, and nearly destroyed me. I know. He pulled out his phone, typed something, then held it out to me. This is Lorenzo's direct number. If anything happens, anything you call him, he'll die before he lets harm come to either of you. I took the phone, our fingers brushing. The contact felt electric. How long will you be gone? 2 days, maybe 3. He moved toward the door, then stopped, his hand on the frame. There's something else you should know. The brick, the message. It wasn't just about leverage. What do you mean? He turned back, and his eyes were dark with something I couldn't name. The handwriting. It was feminine. Precise, the kind of script they teach in expensive private schools. Understanding dawned cold and terrible. You think a woman is behind this? I think, Dante said quietly, that someone knows more about Elena's birth than they should. And I think they're trying to take her from me. The door closed behind him. The lock clicked, and I was alone with my daughter in a cottage older than memory, wondering what secrets were still waiting to surface. Chapter 7. The woman in the photograph. Elena woke at dawn, confused and frightened. Where's Papa? Her voice was small, fragile in the gray morning light filtering through the cottage windows. I sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing dark curls from her forehead in a gesture that felt both instinctive and terrifying. He had to go to work, but he'll be back soon. He always comes back, she said, like she was trying to convince herself, even when the bad things happen. Even when the bad things happen. The casual way she said it made my chest ache. This was her normal violence and threats, and a father who disappeared to handle danger she was too young to understand. I'm here, I offered, and Rosa sent breakfast. I'd found bread and jam in the cellar, along with supplies that suggested the safe house had been prepared long before yesterday's crisis. Elena studied me with those honey-colored eyes, my eyes, and I could see her trying to work something out. Are you going to stay? For now. But you're going to leave. Not a question. A certainty drawn from experience. Everyone leaves except Papa. I didn't know how to answer that, so I didn't. Instead, I carried her to the small kitchen table and watched her eat bread with jam while morning light turned the olive groves golden outside. My phone, Lorenzo's phone, sat silent on the table. No word from Dante. No news. By midday, I was pacing. Elena had found a box of old toys in a cupboard, wooden blocks, a doll with a porcelain face, things from another era. She played quietly, absorbed in building elaborate structures that she'd knock down and rebuild. Testing stability. Testing what would fall and what would stand. I recognized the impulse. At 2 o'clock, the phone buzzed. Lorenzo, supplies at the door. Don't open until I'm gone. I waited 5 minutes, then cracked the door open. A box sat on the stone step. Food, water, fresh clothes, and underneath, wrapped in cloth, a handgun. I stared at it, my hands shaking. I'd never held a gun. Never wanted to. But now, I took it inside. What's that? Elena asked, looking up from her blocks. Nothing. Just supplies. I rewrapped it quickly, shoved it in a high cupboard. Are you hungry? She shook her head, then went back to her building, but I caught her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. That same analytical expression Dante got when he was assessing threats. 3 years old, and she already knew how to evaluate danger. The afternoon stretched long and silent. I tried calling my business partner, but the call wouldn't connect. The cottage was too remote, or Dante had somehow blocked my access to the outside world. Probably both. At dusk, Elena asked me to read to her. The only book in the cottage was an old volume of Italian fairy tales, the pages yellowed and brittle. I read haltingly, my Italian rusty but serviceable, while she curled against my side like she'd done this 1,000 times, like she'd been waiting for me. This one's sad, she said when I finished a story about a girl who turned into a nightingale. Why do the stories always have to be sad? Not all of them are. The good ones are. She tilted her head up to look at me. Papa says the best stories are the ones that hurt. Of course he did. Night fell thick and absolute, the kind of darkness that only exists far from cities. I'd just gotten Elena into bed when the phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Check the cellar, behind the wine rack. I stared at the message. Why wouldn't Dante use Lorenzo's phone? Why the cryptic instruction, I shouldn't go, should stay with Elena, lock the doors, follow the protocols Dante had established. But my feet were already moving. The cellar stairs were steep and narrow, the air cool and damp. A single bulb cast weak light over stone walls and earthen floor. The wine rack stood against the far wall, old bottles covered in dust, untouched for years. I pulled it aside. Behind it, carved into the stone, was a small niche. Inside, a metal box. My hands trembled as I opened it. Photographs. Dozens of them. All of the same woman. She was young, early 20s maybe, dark hair, pale skin, beautiful, in an ethereal way that seemed almost unreal. In some photos, she was pregnant, her hand resting on her swollen belly. In others, she held an infant. Elena. This woman was holding infant Elena. The surrogate. This had to be the surrogate Dante claimed he couldn't find. But if he couldn't find her, why were her photographs hidden in his grandmother's cottage? I flipped through them, my pulse racing. In the last photo, the woman stood in front of this very cottage, recognizable by the distinctive arched doorway. She was smiling at whoever held the camera, her expression intimate, knowing. On the back, in Dante's handwriting, Francesca. Always. The phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. Now you know what I've been protecting you from. Don't trust what he's told you. Don't trust him. A friend. I stared at the message, then at the photographs, then at the stone walls that suddenly felt like they were closing in. Footsteps on the stairs made me spin around. Julia? Elena stood at the top of the cellar stairs, the stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, her small face pale in the dim light. I had a bad dream. I can't find Papa. I shoved the photos back in the box, my mind racing. Francesca. Who was Francesca? Why had Dante lied about not knowing the surrogate? And who had just texted me? Come here, Piccola. I climbed the stairs, taking Elena's hand. Let's get you back to bed. But as I tucked her in, as I smoothed her hair and whispered reassurances I didn't feel, all I could think about was the woman in the photographs, and the look on her face that suggested she'd been far more than just a surrogate, the look of a woman who'd been loved. Chapter 8. When the Wolves Come Home. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window with the gun Lorenzo had left, watching shadows move through the olive groves, jumping at every sound. The photographs were spread across the table behind me. Evidence of a lie I didn't fully understand yet. Francesca. Always. The word always felt like a knife between my ribs. Elena slept fitfully, whimpering in her dreams. Twice I went to her, pressed my hand to her forehead, whispered comfort in a voice that felt like my mother's. The second time, she gripped my fingers and wouldn't let go, so I climbed into the narrow bed beside her, her small body curled against mine. This, I thought, this is what I missed. 3 years of nightmares and comfort, of whispered fears and morning laughter, of watching her grow from infant to child, and Dante had taken it from me. Or had he? The question gnawed at me through the dark hours. The note claimed he'd been protecting me. But from what? From Francesca? From the truth about Elena's birth? From his own involvement in something far more complicated than a stolen embryo? Dawn came pale and cold. I just started making coffee when I heard it, the distinct sound of a car engine on the dirt road. Too early for Lorenzo. Too deliberate for a mistake. I grabbed the gun, my hands clumsy with fear, and moved to the window. A black SUV pulled up to the cottage. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and Dante stepped out. He looked like he'd been through hell. His suit was wrinkled, his tie gone, a bruise darkening his jaw. When his eyes found the cottage window, found me, something in his expression made my breath catch. Relief, raw and unguarded. I unlocked the door before I could think better of it. He crossed the distance in 3 strides and pulled me against him, hard and sudden, his face buried in my hair. I felt his chest heave, felt the tremor in his hands where they gripped my waist. "You're safe," he said, and it sounded like a prayer. "Cristo, you're safe." I should have pushed him away, should have demanded answers about Francesca, about the photographs, about everything he'd hidden. But for one stolen moment, I just stood there and let him hold me. Let myself remember what it felt like to be anchored to something solid when the world was spinning apart. Then, reality crashed back. I stepped out of his arms, raising the gun between us. "Who is Francesca?" Dante went absolutely still. His eyes dropped to the weapon in my hands, then lifted to my face. "Where did you hear that name?" "The cellar. The photographs. Your handwriting." My voice shook. "You said you didn't know who the surrogate was. You lied." He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they were filled with something that looked like resignation. "Put the gun down, Julia. Tell me the truth first." "I will. I swear I will. But put the gun down before Elena wakes up and sees you pointing it at me." The mention of our daughter made me hesitate. He was right. Elena didn't need more trauma, more evidence that the adults in her life were dangerous and volatile. I lowered the weapon, but didn't set it down. Dante moved past me into the cottage, checking the rooms with practiced efficiency before returning to where I stood. He looked exhausted, older than his 34 years, like he'd been carrying weight that was finally becoming visible. "Sit," he said quietly. "Please." We sat at the small table, the photographs between us. He picked up the one of Francesca in front of the cottage, studied it like it caused him physical pain, then set it down carefully. "She was my half-sister," he said. "Illegitimate. Secret. My father's greatest shame and his favorite child. I hadn't been expecting that. Half-sister. My grandmother raised her here. Away from the family. Away from the judgment and the politics." His fingers traced the edge of the photograph. "She was brilliant. Kind. Everything the Moretti family wasn't, and when Dr. Russo approached her about carrying a child, about giving her dying brother the heir he desperately wanted, she said yes. The pieces were starting to fit together, horrible and clear. You knew, from the beginning you knew she was carrying Elena." "No." His voice was rough. "I knew Francesca was pregnant. I knew she'd agreed to be a surrogate for someone, but I didn't know it was my child, our child, until after she'd already died. The word hit like a blow. Died? Postpartum hemorrhage, 6 hours after delivering Elena. His jaw tightened. By the time I found out what Dr. Russo had done, Francesca was gone, and Elena was already placed with the couple through a falsified adoption. It took me 8 months to get her back. 8 months of legal battles and bribes and threats. 8 months of knowing my daughter was out there somewhere being raised by strangers, while my sister was dead because of my embryo. I stared at him, trying to process. That's why you kept her, not just because she was yours, but because she was Francesca's. She's all I have left of her. His voice cracked slightly. The only good thing to come from any of this. Outside, the sun was fully risen now, burning off the morning mist. Inside, the cottage felt too small for all the grief and secrets it contained. Who sent me those text messages, I asked. Who told me not to trust you? Dante's expression darkened. That's why I came back early. I found the traitor. Who? My cousin, Isabella, Francesca's mother. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo of an elegant woman in her 50s. She blames me for Francesca's death. Thinks I manipulated her into being the surrogate. Elena wants to raise her as Francesca's daughter, not mine. And she's been feeding information to the Marchettis to destabilize my position. Where is she now? His expression went cold. Somewhere she can't hurt anyone. Before I could ask what that meant, a sound made us both turn. Elena stood in the doorway, still in her nightgown, her rabbit trailing from one hand. She looked at Dante, then at me, then at the gun still sitting on the table. Are you fighting? She asked quietly. Is Julia going to leave like everyone else? Dante crossed to her, knelt down. No, Tesoro, no one's leaving. Elena's eyes found mine over his shoulder. Promise? And I realized in that moment that despite everything, the lies, the danger, the impossible complexity of this life, there was only one answer I could give. I promise, I said. Chapter 9. The blood on his hands was for me. Time fragmented. DeLuca's gun against my temple. Cold metal, his breath in my ear. Don't move. Then Dante's voice cutting through the screaming. Let her go. I couldn't see him. The restaurant was chaos of returned tables, shattered glass, smoke from something burning. But I heard him, close, lethal, Marchetti. DeLuca's grip tightened on my arm. Should have known you were behind this. Last chance. Let her go. Or what? You'll shoot? With all these witnesses? DeLuca laughed, but it was nervous. You're not that stupid. You have no idea what I am. The gunfire outside had stopped. In its place, an eerie silence. Then footsteps. Multiple sets. Heavy boots on marble. Dante's men flooding the restaurant. You're surrounded, Dante said. His voice was closer now. I could hear him moving through the darkness. Your options are very simple. Release her and walk out alive. Or don't, and I'll make sure your family finds pieces of you for months. You're bluffing. Am I? A pause. Ask Marcus. Oh wait, you can't. Because 3 of my men just put him in a car headed to a warehouse you'll never find. DeLuca's breathing had gone ragged. The gun pressed harder against my skull. She's insurance, he said. You want her alive? You let me walk out of here. No, Dante said softly. You want to walk out of here alive? You let her go. That's the only version of this where you survive the next 60 seconds. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I could smell DeLuca's sweat, sharp with fear. His hand was shaking. Dante, I said quietly, I'm okay. You're not. His voice cracked on the words, but you will be. Then everything happened at once. Emergency lights kicked on dim red backup power. In the crimson glow, I saw Dante 10 feet away. No longer disguised, just himself, gun raised, pointed at DeLuca's head. Behind him, 6 men in tactical gear, all armed, all aimed at us. Shoot me and she dies, DeLuca said. Shoot her and you die slowly. Dante took a step closer. I'm very good at slowly. You're insane. Yes. Another step. I've been told that. Something shifted in Dante's stance, a decision made. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw an apology. Then he fired. Not at DeLuca. At the antique chandelier directly above us. It came down in a crash of crystal and metal. DeLuca's instinct was to look up, to flinch away. His grip loosened for half a second. I drove my elbow into his ribs, twisted away from the gun, dropped, and rolled. Dante was moving before I hit the ground. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, knocked the gun from DeLuca's hand, and drove his fist into the captain's face with a sound like breaking wood. DeLuca went down hard. Dante was on him instantly. Brutal. Efficient. Violence I'd only imagined, now real and immediate. Dante, I gasped. Don't. He froze, looked at me. His knuckles were split, bleeding. DeLuca was unconscious beneath him, face already swelling. Don't kill him, I finished. We need him alive. To testify. Something in Dante's expression shifted. The beast retreated, barely. He stood, breathing hard, and turned to his men. Get him out of here. Secure location. Medical attention enough to keep him alive. His voice was flat. Command. And find Marcus. I want him brought to the same place. 2 men moved forward, hauled DeLuca's limp body between them, and dragged him toward the back exit. Then Dante was in front of me, his hands on my face, gentle despite the violence still humming through his body. Did he hurt you? I'm fine. Elena. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Did he hurt you? No. I'm okay, I promise. He closed his eyes, drew in a shaking breath. When he opened them again, they were wet. I thought, his voice broke, when I saw that gun against your head, I thought, I know. I covered his hands with mine. But I'm here. I'm okay. Around us, his men were clearing the restaurant. The few remaining patrons were being ushered out through emergency exits, phones confiscated, assurances made. This would be contained. Controlled. Because this was Dante's world. And in his world, violence could be erased with the right amount of money and fear. We need to leave, he said finally. The real police will be here soon. The ones not on Marcus's payroll. What about the meeting tonight? The evidence we needed? We have better evidence now. He gestured to where DeLuca had been, a police captain caught trying to kill you in a public restaurant. Marcus disappeared. It's enough to start turning pressure, enough to make people talk, but not enough to dismantle the operation. His jaw tightened. No, not yet. I thought of Marco, of the corkboard in his study, the red string connecting all the pieces, of the women who were still being trafficked, the weapons still being smuggled. Then we finish it, I said, tonight. The meeting is still happening, isn't it? Probably. But without Marcus and DeLuca, they'll panic, make mistakes. I stood, ignoring the way my legs shook. That's when we hit them, when they're fractured and scared. Dante stared at me. You just had a gun to your head. And now I'm angry. I picked up my bag from where it had fallen, checked that my camera was still intact. You said you wanted to burn down everyone who took Marco from you, so let's burn it all down. He studied me for a long moment. Then something like pride flickered across his face. You're terrifying, he said. Good. I walked toward the exit, then looked back. Are you coming? He followed. Of course he followed. In the car, speeding away from the wreckage of Gravina, Dante made 3 phone calls in rapid Italian, coordinating, planning. When he finished, he looked at me. If we do this, if we go after them, tonight, there's no going back. You understand that? I understand. People will die. I know. You might die. I reached across the space between us, took his bloodied hand in mine. Then die with me, I said. His fingers tightened around mine. Elena, don't, I interrupted. Don't tell me this is too dangerous or that I should walk away. I'm already in this. I was in it the moment Marco downloaded my photographs. The moment you found me. You could still. What? Go back to my life? Pretend none of this happened? I laughed, bitter. There is no back. There's only forward, through them. He raised our joined hands, pressed his lips to my knuckles. The gesture was tender, devastating. All right, he said. We end it tonight. Chapter 10, The Truth That Set Us Free. The building looked different at night, more menacing. Or maybe I was different, no longer naive, no longer innocent. Standing in the shadows with a camera in my hands, and a man capable of murder at my back. They're already inside, Dante said, checking his phone. His people had eyes on every entrance. 8 men. No Marcus or DeLuca. They know something's wrong. Good. Scared men talk. We were in the parking garage, the service elevator 20 feet away. The same plan, different execution. Dante's men had cut the building's security feeds 10 minutes ago. We had a 30-minute window before someone noticed. Once we're in position, Dante said, you document everything. Faces, names if they use them, anything incriminating. And you? I'll be listening. Recording. He pulled out a small device, no bigger than a quarter. Audio surveillance. If they say anything that connects them to the trafficking or the weapons shipments, we'll have it. And if they don't talk, his expression darkened, then I'll make them talk. After, you're safe. The elevator was older than the building itself, all steel grating and mechanical groans. We rode up in silence, our bodies close in the confined space. I could feel the heat of him, the controlled violence humming beneath his skin. At the 3rd floor, the elevator shuddered to a stop. Dante checked the corridor. Empty. He moved like liquid shadow, and I followed. My camera bag clutched tight. The maintenance room was exactly where the schematics showed, a narrow space filled with cleaning supplies and ancient electrical panels. And along the far wall, a window of one-way glass looking directly into the conference room. Inside, 8 men sat around a table. I didn't recognize most of them, but 2 a man in an expensive suit and another with military bearing matched faces from Marco's investigation. That's Konstantin Volkov, Dante whispered, pointing to the military man, Russian arms dealer, and beside him, Vincent Calabrese, he owns half the port. I raised my camera, started shooting. The men were arguing. I couldn't hear through the glass, but their body language screamed tension. Calabrese kept checking his phone. Volkov looked ready to walk out. Dante placed the surveillance device against the glass. Suddenly their voices came through tinny, but clear. Can't reach Marcus or DeLuca. For all we know, they're already talking. DeLuca won't talk. He has too much to lose. He has everything to lose, which means he might cut a deal. Then we need to move the operation. Tonight, liquidate what we can and disappear. My hands were steady as I photographed them. Every face, every gesture. Evidence that would hold up in any court. What about the girl? Another voice. Younger, the photographer. If she has copies, she's being handled. By who? Marcus is gone. DeLuca is compromised. A pause. Then Calabrese spoke, his voice cold. I have people watching her apartment. The moment she shows up, she disappears. Permanently. Dante's hand clenched into a fist beside me. I touched his arm, shook my head, not yet. And Marchetti? Volkov's accent was thick. He's been sniffing around since his brother died. Marchetti is a problem we should have solved months ago. His brother was weak. Couldn't handle the reality of what we do. Marchetti is different. Different how? Dangerous. Volkov stood, paced. Marco Marchetti asked questions. Gathered evidence. Dante Marchetti burns buildings down with people inside them. The casual way they discussed Marco's murder like it was a business decision made my stomach turn. Dante's breathing had gone shallow beside me. I kept shooting. Then we eliminate him too, Calabrese said. Tonight, before he can move against us. You're not listening. Volkov leaned on the table. Dante Marchetti is not a man you eliminate. He's a force. You don't fight forces. You negotiate with them or you run from them. I don't run. Then you die. The room went silent. Then Calabrese's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went white. When? A pause. How many of our people? Another pause. Christ. He hung up. Looked around the table. We have a bigger problem. Marchetti just hit 3 of our warehouses. Simultaneously. He's taken everything, our product, our records, our leverage, and he's uploaded files to every major news outlet in the city. Shipping manifests. Photographs. Everything. The room erupted. Men shouting over each other. Panic spreading like fire. I looked at Dante. His expression was grim satisfaction. You planned this, I whispered. All of it. I told you I'd burn it down. He checked his phone. My people have been working all day. Every piece of evidence we gathered from your photographs, from Marco's files, it's all out there now. By morning, every investigative journalist in the country will be digging into this. But we're still here. With them. Yes. He pulled out his gun. Because now we have them trapped and desperate, which means they'll say anything to save themselves. As if on cue, Calabrese started talking. We need immunity deals, now. I have contacts in the DA's office. Those contacts are already being arrested, someone said, checking their phone. Federal raids, simultaneous hits. They got everyone. Not everyone. Volkov stood. Some of us are smart enough to have exit plans. He moved toward the door. Dante was already moving. He stepped out of the maintenance room, into the hallway blocking Volkov's path. The Russian froze. Going somewhere? Dante asked pleasantly. Behind him, I heard the conference room door burst open. Dante's men, flooding in. Shouts. The sound of bodies hitting the floor. Volkov reached for his weapon. I wouldn't, Dante said. His gun was already raised. You see, my brother was collecting evidence against you for 6 months. Did you know that? 6 months of his life dedicated to stopping you. Your brother was a fool. My brother, Dante said softly, was a better man than I'll ever be. Which is why I'm going to do this his way. You're going to stand trial. You're going to spend the rest of your life in a cage. And every day, you'll remember that it was a fool who caught you. Volkov's hands slowly raised. 3 hours later, we stood on the roof of Dante's safe house watching the sunrise paint the city gold. It's over, I said. The operation is over. The trials will take years. But Marco would be proud. Dante's voice was rough. He wanted justice. He got it. I leaned against him. His arm came around me, solid and warm. What happens now? I asked. Now? He turned me to face him. Now I figure out how to live in a world where I'm not just destroying things. And me? You, he said, cupping my face. You became the most dangerous thing that ever happened to me. You made me want something other than revenge. What do I make you want? He kissed me. Soft this time, full of promise instead of desperation. Tomorrow, he whispered against my lips. I want tomorrow, with you. Below us, the city woke to headlines that would change everything. Above us, the sky turned from gold to blue. And between us, something fragile and new took root. Not love, not yet. But the possibility of it, which was more than either of us had dared to hope for.